Hello, it's Kelly DeMarco here, and I am taking you on a walk with me, and I want to have a conversation with you today about aligned activism, which is something that's very near and dear to my heart. When it comes to climate action and doing things for our environment, I feel like it can get overwhelming because none of us really have a lot more time on our hands to take action. And I personally am in the midst of caregiving for my husband with cancer. I have 2 kids one is in middle school, one's in high school. I work full time as a rehab manager and occupational therapist. We have a small farm, so there's some chores related to that. And then there's just like the normal activities that go along with being married, having children, or just being, showing up however you show up in your daily life. And then throwing activism in on top of that feels sometimes a little daunting. So we can numb out, tune out, shut down, feel hopeless because we're not doing anything. And I found that taking action has been the best antidote for my own eco-anxiety. And I don't imagine for a second that my action alone is going to be the game changer and turn climate change around. It's probably a little windy, so bear with me, but it's beautiful out here. But I do find that when we are intentional and kind of have a better understanding of what kinds of actions we can take that will make a larger impact, we can be more selective and more intentional about how we show up in the activism arena. So for me, I think when I first saw our youth starting to march and really rise to the occasion and step up and demand that our systems change, I started looking at my own life and looking at the hats that I wear and the roles that I fill as a healthcare leader, as an occupational therapist, as a parent. And I had taken strides in the past, but then found myself kind of entrenched in an adult life with adult responsibilities, and was doing some things, but didn't really feel like those things were making a larger impact. So I just started putting down on paper, like, who am I? What are the hats that I wear and the roles that I fill? And I wrote them all down. And I drew circles around them and started just drawing arrows and looking at, like, well, how could I be taking further strides in each of these areas, and not in spite of the hats that I wear and the roles that I fill, not in addition to, but because of the hats that I wear and the roles that I fill. How would these give me an opportunity to kind of leverage these roles and step into them in a more intentional way to take more meaningful, purposeful, and powerful strides that I probably couldn't take if I weren't wearing these hats and filling these roles. So I'm just going to share with you like what this journey has been like for me and what I've done, so that when you are looking at your own life and trying to figure out how can you do more on top of what you're already doing, I want you to look at your life differently and see the things that you're doing as really the very foundational, important piece for you being able to take more meaningful action. So for me, it started out with my day job as an occupational therapist and rehab manager, and just having conversations in my workplace with coworkers about my concern for the planet. And this turned into an invitation from a coworker to help start and launch a green team at our workplace. And so we pulled together 7 people, and our initial focus was on the low-hanging fruit. And what I found was stepping into that work allowed me to bring my care and my concern for the planet into my day job versus leaving it at the door and picking it up on the way out and feeling frustrated that here's this thing that I care so deeply about that I can't do a thing about. Each day I show up to the work of caring for the health of people. And I know that for people to thrive, for human health to, exist, our planet has to thrive. And this work of being a part of a green team effort really allowed me to merge these areas of interest and concern. And it began to take on a life of its own. Eventually the green team people went their separate ways and moved on to other agencies and other kinds of work, and I was sort of the last person standing, and found myself as the newly elected green team leader but without a team, and just realized that I would really need to step up. And so I started looking around me and identifying people that I thought might be interested and having intentional conversations with them, which sometimes looked like, hey, why are you not on the green team? With a funny response, like a funny stare at me in response. And I said, I feel like you're really concerned about this stuff too. And the answer that I got was, I am deeply concerned, but I'm so concerned that it terrifies me. And my response to that is, that's exactly why you need to be on the green team. That's exactly why we need to be doing this work together. And my other answer to that was, I don't have all the answers as the green team leader. I don't know how we're going to go about doing this, how we're going to decarbonize our healthcare, how we deliver healthcare within our organization. But we can't let not knowing be the barrier to taking action. So I invite you to step into this unknown terrain and do this with me. And then we eventually, I discovered Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council and some tools that helped us figure out where are we at now, and where do we want to go, and what are we most positioned to do given who we are as an organization. And it really was a matter of meeting people, making connections, having conversations that helped us find our way forward. And then that kind of introduced me to the budding organization called Wisconsin Health Professionals for Climate Action, which eventually transitioned into Healthy Climate Wisconsin. And I went to their first conference because I was looking for like-minded peers in healthcare who were deeply concerned about this issue and making strides in our state. And just through those connections and attending one, monthly meeting in the evenings, I really started to educate myself more and look at oh, I could do this, I can do that. It made me realize that who I am as an occupational therapist actually allows me to figure out some of the barriers because of what I know about human psychology, of what I know about human health, of what I know about how important engagement in meaningful occupation is in the face of things that we're very concerned and anxious about. And then that work, participating on the state level, in terms of like education, advocacy, speaking out for policy changes that were more in favor of a thriving environment within our own state, and drawing the connections between, all of our natural ecosystems thriving and human thriving. I really started to look at who I am as an occupational therapist, and another hat that I wear is coach, and who I am as a coach. And that took me down a couple of other paths. One was towards the American Occupational Therapy Association to find out what's happening within my own profession. Who's doing what? What kind of strides are we making to align our profession with the important work of climate action? And I started to meet people and a cohort of therapists called Occupational Therapists for Environmental Action, and started to engage with them. And it sounds like a lot, but it was really like attending a meeting here and there, speaking up about what I care about, speaking up about what I know from my own lived experience. And the same thing with another group called the Climate Coaching Alliance. I attended a 6-week, one-time-a-week program called Climate Change Coaches, which really helped me figure out how to coach in the space of climate change and climate action and climate anxiety, and then joining the Climate Coaching Alliance, which is an international organization. I just became aware of like what's happening on the national level, what's happening on the international level, and it's, these things have kind of taken on a life of their own and allowed me to step into action and activism work that feels way bigger, way more intentional than, kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis, in terms of like recycling and composting. And I think that those day-to-day steps matter a lot because they help me take responsibility for and be mindful of my own carbon footprint and my own waste production, my own kind of dependency on this system that we've created that's causing our downfall as a species, so that I can begin to make like more intentional lifestyle changes. And I'm not perfect at any of that, and I think it's a fallacy to think that any of us need to be perfect at those things, that we have to get those things right before we can take more meaningful strides on a larger scale. I think what I find is that leveraging our systems and helping our systems change from the inside out, inside of the roles that we're already filling, inside of the expertise that we've already developed because we've pursued education and work and engagement in society around things that we're naturally inclined towards. And so I think those engagements allow us to kind of step into the arena of action and activism in a way that is very unique to who we are and how we show up in the world. And there are green jobs that I am absolutely not qualified for, like solar panels and installation and doing that kind of work. Like, that's not my area of expertise. I'm not an engineer. I can be an advocate for us making that transition, but that's someone else's work to really figure all of that out. You know, I'm not in the business of transforming how restaurants are run, but I am a consumer. And so I do see it as my responsibility to speak up for what is important to me at the cash register when I go to make my purchases. And so being silent then makes me guilty in some way, because I haven't spoken up for what's important to me and I haven't let someone else know that it matters. And I continue to buy into a system that is doing business the way it's always done it, because the system itself doesn't know that we as consumers want and demand that it change. And so the problems that we face right now, the transitions that are needed, need to happen on a system-wide level. They need to happen on a policy level. They need to happen, you know, big picture all over the place. But each of us function inside of these systems. Each of us have a responsibility to kind of wake up inside of these roles that we fill and advocate for change and look intentionally at how things are done to see if could they be done differently. If you're a healthcare consumer, maybe you feel like you can't make healthcare delivery shift, but I'm going to tell you, each time you get that employee or the patient satisfaction survey, you have an opportunity to say, when I walk inside of a healthcare organization, I don't want to have to choose between my health and planetary health. I want to be able to make choices that consider the safety and well-being and health of our environment, while also receiving these necessary healthcare services for myself or my loved one. So in the past, I've said, you know, like, I'm not really here to give you the answers. I'm here to poke at the questions, and I'm here to kind of help you feel what your level of concern is and maybe sink in more deeply to the reality of what that concern is. What I find is a lot of people don't want to feel it because they don't know what to do about it then. But we have to feel it, because when we feel it, it arouses us. It stimulates a kind of internal response that is necessary. And then the next step is to do a deep dive into how you already show up in the world. And maybe there's things that you are doing that you don't want to do anymore, and it's time to let those go. But maybe there's other things that you want to be doing more of, and it's time to open up room for those. So it might be a time to say no to some things and open up to saying yes to others. And then the next thing would be to look at, for the things that you're saying yes to, how do those uniquely position you to take more strides in the environmental sustainability and climate action arena? It's really living in harmony with a thriving planet and living in harmony with creating conditions that are right for a thriving planet. So I think that's all I have to say on that topic right now. I'm sure I'll have more to say over time, but that's, for me, what aligned activism is about. That's how I do it in my own life. On the family, personal level, we were taking strides to have a small regenerative farmstead. It's kind of gotten put on hold a little bit because of my husband's cancer experience and all of the energy that goes into, dealing with that. But there's no shortage of things you can do, and you also are not responsible for doing all of it and doing it perfectly. But there are things that you can definitely do that are really only things that you can do. And they're probably things that only you can get passionate about because they're very specific to you. And I feel like our planet is calling each of us to rise to the occasion and align caring for our planet with the things that we've already felt called to do and be in this wonderful life. So blessings and peace, and thank you for listening. And I will say goodbye for now.